Hi, it's Gina with Kingdom Sewing, and I want to show you this nifty little gadget that we got in recently. This is the Ideal Seam Gauge, and I'm going to show you also the Ideal Seam Guide. So you can see here on the gauge that it's got different measurements, 1/8, a scant quarter, a quarter, 3/8, and so on. And then along these little arrows, there's a hole here where we're going to put our needle down into the gauge, and that's going to help us to get a precise measurement to the edge of the gauge so that we have a perfect seam allowance. So let me show you how that goes onto the machine. So with my needle in the center position, let me get my thread out of the way here for you. With my needle in the center position, I'm going to bring it down into the hole for that 1/4 inch. And that's going to hold the guide in place, or I'm sorry, the gauge in place. And I'm going to lay down the Ideal Seam Guide, which has a repositionable sticky on the back. You'll notice it also has a little cutout here to fit around those larger feet. So I'm going to slide this up right next to my guide, and it just sticks down, and then I can lift my needle out and I can remove the guide. And now when I sew my 1/4 inch seam, I'm going to line up with the edge of the guide here. And that's going to give me my perfect 1/4 inch seam. And you'll notice this is a longer guide. I believe it's about 12 inches. So it gives us a much longer area that we can use as for that edge to keep our fabric lined up. And you'll see there's my perfect 1/4 inch. Now this can also work with your 1/4 inch foot. So I'll lift up my guide because I'm going to have to move it over a little bit. On this particular Janome machine, because it's a 9mm, has a 9mm feet system and stitch width, we aren't going to leave our needle in the center here. So with this particular foot, I need to move my needle over a little bit, but that's okay because I can still then bring this down. Now you'll see that my foot has a guide on it, which is okay. I'm going to drop my needle down into the hole, and you'll see my guide lines right up, the guide on my foot lines right up with that gauge. That's fine, but what if I wanted to have a longer edge there? I can now attach my gauge, or I'm sorry, my guide. I'm getting those two words confused, aren't I? I can attach my guide there so that I have more area in front of the needle where I can line my fabric up. So I'll lift that, pull the gauge out, and again I'm set up for my 1/4 inch seam. So we'll bring my fabric up here, and it just is going to allow me to start lining up my fabric before I get all the way to the foot. And there again, I'll have that perfect 1/4 inch. And there we go. So you'll see, you may be wondering about this big cutout. Again, that's just to work with any large size feet that you have. I believe it will also accommodate some brands of walking feet too. So if you're wanting to use this guide with a walking foot, you have that cutout space to allow room for the foot to fit in there as well. So pretty handy little gadget that we've got here. The set sells for $34.95. That's the Ideal Seam Gauge and the Ideal Seam Guide with that repositionable sticky on the back. And if this gets to where it's not sticking so much anymore, all you have to do is wash it off, get any lint off of there, and it gets sticky again. So great way to get those accurate seams for your quilting. Stop by and pick one up today.